Hi, this is Dr. Alana James. Our video recording at Big Marker this afternoon, this is the 23rd of September 2015, wasn't all that I wanted because we were also working with other people's videos. And so I thought I'd do a quick YouTube video and let you find that material here in a way that was perhaps better. So our topic is this is a part one of two parts on understanding the literature review, and this is the organization of it. One of the things that we see when people come to us for coaching at DoctoralNet is that the literature review can be very confusing, and that confusion often comes from this not really understanding what it's supposed to do. So let's start at the end and go backwards. Please go to this URL, stop the video, go to that URL, and watch this woman's 3-minute presentation about her thesis study, and we'll come back. Okay, you're back. Now, we want to say that the purpose of this literature review is to provide background for the reader so that they can understand what is already known and not known, what has been done before and not done before. These is discussed in other ways as creating the significance of your study through opening up the gaps. Now, you also may find that there are gaps that your study will fill because you are taking a different theoretical position or because you are taking a different methodological position. Now, we don't know anything about her theoretically or methodologically, but we do know that she was concerned with gender. She's concerned with the differences in gender relationships around the world. She's mentioned that men have certain advantages. So she would have to uncover the studies that from which she was basing those statements. And if this topic has ever been studied in Afghanistan before, she'd need to tell us about that. Let's take another example. If you go to this URL, and I'll open it up. The one you're looking for, there's several on the page. The one that you're looking for is how plants defend themselves. It's really well done. It's worth your 2 minutes. And I'll meet you back here. Now, what did she need for us to understand from her literature? Well, we needed to know what she had told us about plants, about how they defend themselves, about how some of the things that they do actually help attract the kind of bugs that help them defend themselves. And then how if those balances are not as successfully grown, how a particular plant can become under attack, as she mentioned with corn and this particular parasite. So we need to understand a lot about corn, about maize, about its place. Why was she going to South America? We'd need to have a little historical background. And throughout this, she would need to be highlighting the things that she showed us in the 2 minutes, which were intriguing, weren't they? Again, she didn't tell us about her study theoretically, but methodologically, we would probably need to understand how uh, the way plants defend themselves, how that is measured, and how other people might have measured it in other studies, and how her study fit into that stream. All right, so you have an idea, I hope, of what needs to be in your lit review. Now, what's the problem? Well, the problem is this is not how you read literature. You read literature putting things together, ideas together, much more like a mind map. So you understand one thing, it teases out other different ideas, which might lead you to an entirely different structure. And then we list them in a ABCD kind of way, maybe slotting the different authors into folders. But how to discuss them is very difficult from these formats. So first, let's look at what the mind map could be. You could be separating it into all about your topic, its history, the previous research findings, and then the discussion of the subtopics which lead us to understand your particular study. We also, as examiners, need to understand the point of view underlying your work. That's your theoretical base and also your methodological base in some ways and for some kinds of methodology. How did previous people study your topic? Has it been studied? And has it been studied in the same way or different ways? We need to place your study within this, again, kind of like a river of studies. And once again, throughout all of these, whenever there are gaps or differences, you need to point them out, or we need to have them made apparent to us. Next week, in part 2 of this, I'll discuss how one person set that up using one particular theoretical framework. But remember, your gaps are what make your study interesting. So keep your eyes on them when you write. Now, you may or may not be good at finding literature that you want. And so to that end, we see many, many students who don't understand Boolean searches. And this PDF that's on LinkedIn is excellent. It's easy, and you'll see how to use keywords in a more advanced way so you can find the very specific articles that you need if you don't know how to do that. Which leads us now into how do you know what particular topics back up your methodology? So your goal is that your reader understands your topic, is interested because of the gaps you've surfaced, and that the way the literature is presented backs up your methodology in a one-to-one correspondence. And the one-to-one correspondence is critical because many times people don't do well in proposal hearings if they're in the United States because they don't have a very good correspondence between their literature and their methodology. So, going back to our screens, if you sign into the DoctoralNet site, you can sign in here, drops you into your control panel. You can go here to your quick links, and there will be a quick links on the research tool, which looks like this. It asks you what your problem is, and when you've typed it in, you hit more, and then it asks you questions. You keep massaging your problem until it answers the questions well. As an example, I wrote in one that has to do with student populations in higher education changing, and therefore how can technology help solve some of the gaps for the older working full-time student who's also living or at a distance from their university. Now, what questions would I want to ask? Well, what parts of these were people who had a DoctoralNet subscription from their university? What parts of the platform did they find useful? If so, did they find the same ones useful in later years, etc.? And the third box takes me into how am I going to ask my questions? I'm going to ask university students who have a DoctoralNet subscription from their university, and then I'm going to ask them 2 times, 2 months after the enrollment and at the end of the year. So we can see if there's a difference in their understanding of the usefulness of the site in the 2 time periods. What topics would be needed? And this final box is the one that takes you through. So you can go with, you've written it all out. If I have said the student population in higher education in general is changing, I need to discuss the literature on those changes. If I'm saying that the new student tends to be older, working full-time and living at a distance, I need to show where I'm getting those ideas. Same thing with graduation rates declining. That would take me into the literature on PhD completion. And then I would go into what is known about the efficacy of technology enhanced learning, since I'm looking into that, what engagement studies would be available for students who are in an online atmosphere or at a distance, and if anyone has set up previous survey instruments, I should tell my readers about that. Once again, this is the link to the tool, and this quickly shows you that you type, you click, you answer the questions, and you revise until you say yes, and then you go on to the next. Okay, now you have an idea of where you're going. You understand what the literature review needs to say, and you figured out what you found your good literature, and you figured out what your specific literature review needs to have for topics. The final statement is how to organize all of it so you can write it easily. And I call this writing the columns and not the rows. For this, we'll take a look at a spreadsheet that is actually in use on PhD completion with a group that I'm working with. Little off of your screen, this first column are references from the different periodicals, etc., that we've studied. And then across the top are the topics that have to do, as I just pointed them out. The part I had written most recently had to do with retention, completion, what students expect from supervisors. So you put in your reference, and then that reference, you fill in the box that that person said about any of these outside topics. And then when you are ready to write about that topic, you read the column. And it gives you quick, critical analysis of all the research that you have read as it pertains to that topic. It becomes much easier to segment it into the sections or the headings that you would need for your lit review. And then, so I'd have a heading that was supervisors, coaches, or tutors. I'd read these things. I'd have 3 or 4 paragraphs about what is known in that, and I'd be able to write them because these were all grouped. I got the ideas, I put them down, and then I used group citations by zipping back over here and knowing that it was this one, and this one that added up to those things because they were at the top of my column. All right. I tried to do this in 15 minutes. There's a few things up at Doctoral.net. We have a survey, we've got more webinars going on. There's a new question and answer section in the resources where you can get any of your questions answered. You don't even have to sign into the site. And there are still people doing the 30-day challenge, which we will start again in January in a very big way. Until then, I hope everything is going really well with your doctoral study, and we will see you again at another time.